want to spend some time here talking to you, and I think you'll, if you haven't seen the statistics that have come out of this particular time period, I think these are sort of eye-opening, if you will. Again, just this first bullet here, the 48 million people that have quit, excuse me, there's a typo there, who have quit their jobs, not quite their jobs, quit their jobs in 2021. First time ever. This is unprecedented. We've never seen an exodus like this. And people say, why? Why did it happen? And I think, there's a number of reasons for that, and we'll talk a little bit here as we go down. But I will tell you, the mind shifts, the perspective on life, the perspective on the workforce, I think changed during the pandemic. There were lockdowns. People really, I think, I think people started to look at their lives and how the workforce, and people give a lot to their job, and I think being locked down for a year with their families and things of that nature have given them different perspective in life and maybe really figuring out what is important, because obviously it was a very stressful time, everything going on around us, and I think people had a renewed focus on and maybe did some internal soul searching. And then by April of 2021, we just saw this massive exodus, go on. And I think that is continuing, and the market is really ripe for this to continue because there are so many opportunities out there, and people have many more choices today than they have had in the past. And, it used to be, as we all know, that staying at an employer for a very long period of time was something that was attractive. And we really have gotten away from that over the last couple of years. And that's really, that's kind of coincides with the changing times. Skill sets change quickly, the market changes quickly. We pivot much quicker today than we did just 5-10 years ago in the market. So again, you're seeing that shift. It's not really frowned upon today to have multiple jobs in a shorter period of time because there's such a high demand. So it's interesting to see this shift. That's what makes actually the job that I'm in extremely interesting, challenging, but certainly interesting. And again, we're going to talk about how do you take advantage of this particular phenomenon. Again, 4.3 million people, quit their jobs just in March of this year. I look every month and we'll see, how April did. I don't anticipate that April will be any different. We will probably see that again, around the 3 million plus 4 million or so each month. And again, that's been consistent. It's been hovering in that high 3 million to 4 million. And of course, we've well exceeded 4 million in a couple of months over the last year. So again, no indication that it is stopping. I know when you see some of the headlines today with some of the factors they're talking about, hey, a recession could be in the offing here. Interesting that in the event that a recession does hit us, I think the recession that we will see, if we do see it, will be much different than recessions that we've seen in the past. And I'm interested to see how this goes because the demand for talent is still there, which is interesting. I don't anticipate that will go away, and I think it just takes different forms. For instance, as the pandemic shifted, what became the frontline employee? It was actually your grocery store worker, your warehouse worker, things of that nature. So it was very interesting how the disruption caused that. And of course, there was a shift, obviously, to remote work. We set up, massive infrastructures so folks could work from home, things of that nature that seem to be carrying on here, even as we get into what I would consider the post-pandemic time period. So very interesting, a lot of disruption, a lot of changes as a result of the pandemic. I think a lot of these things were in the making. It's just that I think, like for instance, remote work, things of that nature had been coming along for the last few years. Of course, overnight, it really spiked. In 24 hours, it was a spike. So obviously, we brought about a 5-year period into a 24-hour period just overnight. That's how quickly the change had come. And of course, Zoom and so forth became a household name, video engagement, things of that nature. So again, very, very different world today than it was just 2+ years ago. Again, 56% of workers quit because of pay, right? That should tell you something. I mean, certainly compensation, wanting to increase compensation and your overall quality, if you will, of life is always, one of the top reasons why folks will move. And of course, if you're talking specifically here in the Washington, D.C. area, it's a very expensive area. So, and we continue to keep increasing home prices. Just the cost of living here continues to increase. So it is a challenging place to live. And of course, if you're here and you have a family and you're paying mortgage, you might be paying college tuition, certainly the prospect of increasing your earnings and earning potential is extremely attractive to change jobs. And of course, because there's such a demand for talent today, companies know and organizations know that they have to be even more than competitive, because not only are they trying to bring you into their organization, they're competing with other organizations that are competing for you. So again, that's why it's a candidate and a buyer's market. And we're going to talk today how to best position so you can be in a position to have those types of negotiations. What are some of the reasons, in addition to pay, that people have left? And what are the differences here? Why are people leaving? Well, of course, inflation is at its highest it's been in almost 30 plus years. So inflation driving up the cost of living, dollar just isn't as worth as much as it was just a couple of months ago. So we continue to see inflation really going, which may be driving us towards the next recession here. Certainly COVID fears, right? People don't feel that they need to go into an office environment. And, we have seen here over the last couple of months, and it's continuing, where employers are requiring folks to come back to the office, and we're seeing in mass a substantial percentage of the workforce not wanting to do that. Some of that is based on COVID fears. Others is they feel that they can be as productive at home. We have single parents. We have a more flexible lifestyle. I'm a true believer in that, always was. I didn't really believe, unless it was required. Certainly there are jobs out there that do require it. This was something that I pushed over the years in many of my roles, and some of the folks were open to it. Others were just flat out against it. I never could understand that, but I can tell you I had some very interesting conversations with CEOs, other executives over the years who were flat out against it. Just very, very interesting. I get it. You're paying top dollar for certain real estate, things of that nature. And there are, don't get me wrong, there are advantages, there are pluses to being on site, and I think we can't lose sight of that. But certainly there are team building. There is just that human-to-human dynamic that I think you need. And again, those things are out there. But again, since it's a candidate market, that's where the demand is. So we look at that. Bad working environments, right? People aren't really putting up with bad work environments, and that can be an unreasonable supervisor or manager. It could be a toxic culture. It could be a toxic team environment. There are all of these areas that before we would put up with, and we really had a higher threshold to actually put up with these environments. Today, with the demand out here, people are not. Their patience is very thin. People are leaving for very small disagreements, if you will, with their employer because they can. And that's just the way it is. When you find yourself in a market like this, a very robust market, you know that attrition and being able to keep people is a huge challenge. So your environment has to be conducive to accept employees and integrate them and be inclusive and things of that nature. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem in the workforce. I don't think there's ever been a place that I've worked where we haven't seen organizations inside, especially if you're with a big organization. There are some groups and business units that are smooth and in high demand. People want to work in there. And then there are some units and organizations inside companies that have a reputation that, hey, it's a revolving door, it's a bad environment. People are not tolerating, nor should they. They really shouldn't. And that's why I like this, because when it's a candidate environment, I'm of the mindset as a recruiter, I like the challenge, right? I really, really do. Plus, it keeps us employed as recruiters because we're constantly backfilling roles. However, it's a different shift for a lot of different people, and it can be dangerous because, being able to really deliver what you have to do as a service provider, as a manufacturer, not having the staff to do it and having a high turnover really impacts your business. Again, that should be the incentive as to really fix what might be broken in your organization. So again, these are just some of the top reasons. There are others, but I did want to highlight some of the other things that have been stated. And this is just a compilation of a number of surveys that have been out there and some of the things reported. 74% of U.S. employees are currently looking. Yes. It's interesting because that is a figure that's been consistent, for years. I think the difference today is employers are slowly but surely becoming much more proactive in going after talent. The reactive way of hiring and workforce engagement doesn't work today. You're going to fall way behind if you have a model that just has you posting jobs, waiting for people to apply, and reacting. That is not a conducive model. If an organization is using that, and unfortunately many are, there's one of your largest problems that you have to fix. It's actually going to be the firms that are much more proactive, much more engaging, and really value candidate experience and candidate engagement that are ultimately going to win out. A good candidate engagement will lead to higher retention, to a better work environment, and certainly a more positive outlook, in the role that people take on. So again, we're seeing that. But people have always been curious, and I'm going to speak firsthand about this as a recruiter who has been proactive for a lot of years. The majority of folks that you'll actually reach out to have, curiosity. Everybody's curious. So when people would hear proactively from a recruiter or an employer, naturally they would want to just learn what it is and what's the opportunity and how they could match, because there could always be a better opportunity around the corner. Regardless of how satisfied or fulfilled you are in your role, there always could be something better out there. And I encourage everybody on this call that regardless of whether you are happily employed or satisfied in your job, always have that conversation. I will always encourage folks to do that. Interesting, because we are 40 plus, I wanted to pull out this statistic that 33% of U.S. employees between the ages of 45 and 54 are actively looking. Keep in mind that the demand for employees goes across all demographics, particularly with the emphasis on diversification. Diversification comes in a lot of different forms, right? Yes, it's racial, it's ethnic, it's gender-based. It's also demographic-based, right? We want senior folks, we want mid-career folks, we want early career. We want different geographical areas, people from different areas, different cultures, different socioeconomic statuses. All of these are what we would consider a diversified workforce. But folks in that age range, 33%, very high, because traditionally folks were less likely to move once established, obviously, at that point, whether it's mid-career or late career. You typically, at that point in your life, have a mortgage, have college tuitions, other types of things where you are financially engaged and stability was something big. Today, not so much. People are taking actually advantage of this environment to actually increase their earning potential. I think it's fantastic. I really, really do. And I point it out because the demand for talent, we've heard over the years, and you may have heard it, that the demand for talent is always the early career and things of that nature. That's true maybe to certain industries and things of that, but overall, talent is talent, and it is coming in areas, it's across all the demographics. So keep that in mind that there is demand everywhere. We're going to talk about how to best position yourself for that. And then lastly, this is interesting, and I highlighted it and bolded it. 52% of employees with tenures of 3 months or less are looking to leave. And the reason I say this is, as I mentioned, this is a result of employers being very hasty in their ability to hire. And then there is also, which we are going, I put this last here because we're really going to talk about this in positioning yourself. Be very careful of the knee-jerk reaction, right? If you are in between opportunities, we tend to have, and I get it, right? You want to get back to work, and you may not necessarily do as much due diligence on the opportunity as maybe you should. Then you get into the job and figure out that, this is not really what I thought I was signing up for. And it could be, and I'm going to tell you right now, most employers, not all, but most employers will oversell a position, particularly in this environment where they need to hire people. And this is a huge problem. It's a huge problem in recruiting. It's a huge problem just in hiring in general, where there is this craze to get people in because it's such a competitive field that people are overselling and painting this this beautiful picture of work. And once people get in there, they're really, there's challenges in every job, and really you want an employer really to really make sure that they are specifying, what the upside is, but also what are some of the challenges and the downside. You really want a clear picture of the organization and the environment you're walking into. And I know as an employer, believe me, I've been recruiting for a long time. I've hired a lot of people, recruited a lot. You do have this, especially when you're getting pressured from the organization, you tend to really want to paint this beautiful picture. But in actuality, being honest and really being, even, if you will, actually is much better. People appreciate that. They love the integrity. I don't think people are necessarily misleading folks. They're just overselling the job, making it sound much better. And again, every job is, I always say, I have a saying, and some people disagree with this, but I always say, don't look for happiness in a job. Look for fulfillment and satisfaction, right? So there's a difference, right? Do you feel productive, or do you feel respected? Things of that nature. That's fulfilling and satisfying. I don't necessarily, you might not necessarily always have a smile on your face, because there certainly are challenges in every environment. But if you feel fulfilled, satisfied, respected, encouraged in your job, I think that is definitely the best position to be in. So again, really wanted to point out the statistics before we actually move into what I feel is some insight for you, some things to consider, as you go through this journey here.